So for LO4, we're looking at how to plan effective HR strategy. And we need to understand the impact of organizational strategy, organizational structure, and culture on the management of human resources. The idea here is that you need to link your HR strategy to your organization's strategy and organization's unique features. So whatever the business strategy, that's the organizational strategy is, you must find a way for HR to support that through your HR strategy. It can't be supporting something else. The same thing with the organizational structure and the organizational culture. Now, sometimes HR can suggest to change these things. So, for instance, if the organizational structure is too tall, it has too many layers, for instance, and it's not efficient, then HR can make a case to improve by changing that. If the organizational culture is not productive enough or has some features, maybe supports some bad behavior like sexual harassment or whatever, then HR obviously has to make a case to change the culture. The same thing with the strategy. If the strategy maybe is unethical in some aspects, HR can make a case to change these things. So it's not like HR cannot try to influence these things, but basically the starting point should be that whatever the strategy, structure, culture is, HR should support this. So it goes back to, if you remember, I think in the first lecture, first class, we talked about the Harvard model and the matching model and things like that. So how the external forces, political, economic, and cultural forces will shape your organization's strategy, structure, and HR strategy. So that's the idea. So skip a few notes you can read by yourself. I want to focus on this. So this is the point I was trying to make, that the world is changing, organizations are changing, HR are changing. The way we practice HR is changing. So we are looking at terms of a HR plan for a few key things nowadays. One, a clear sense in which we can see HR adding value to the organization. So how does HR add value to the organization? That's one clear thing we want to see. Whether that's by helping it save money through cost reduction, for instance, downsizing, whether that is by improving its quality, skills, competencies through quite a strong leadership and employee development strategy, or whatever means HR does, but there must be clear business case for adding value to the organization. Right? It's not just about recruiting and selecting and training. We are doing it in a way in which this is the way we are going to add value. The second thing is this idea of CSR. You know what CSR means?
Yeah, I just have an idea, like how they are contributing towards the society. Like, for example, is the HR policies, like, I mean, the HR employees needs to, for example, just plant the trees or just make the environment more, more friendly. So these are the places where the HR will focus its employees to be.
Exactly. So that's the idea of CSR, corporate social responsibility. Being more ethical in the way you work, being more responsible to society, whether that's in terms of protecting the environment, the climate change and all of that, reducing your carbon footprint, treating your employees fairly, treating local communities fairly, and so on. So that's very correct points. So now this is a basic idea of what we've been talking about so far. We start with clear identification of what the organization's strategy is, what the organization's culture is, what its financial situation is, especially in terms of its competitive environment and its current organizational situation. So basically a bit of the structure also of the organization and any other important thing we need to know about the organization. This feeds into an assessment of how much budget we have, and also what the needs are, what are the top priorities are in terms of HR for the next 1 year or next 3 years or 5 years, depending on how many years you're using as your timeline or your strategic plan. And then that will feed into the way you do your HR activities, such as recruitment, selection, training, reward and compensation, performance management, and so on. So it's a good model to have in mind when you are actually writing your HR strategy, or sorry, your HR strategic plan. You can actually use this model, have a section to clearly outline the business strategy, current situation with the culture, and so on. Then that will flow into key HR priorities, maybe 2 to 5 HR priorities you want to focus on that will support these or change the strategy and culture and so on. Then you now need to break it down into what they're going to do to recruit, what they're going to do to reward, what they're going to train, and then you can have budget beside it. So we've gone through similar models like this in the past sessions. This is basically the strategic planning process, just repeating the idea that we need to plan based on the HR strategy. So this is an example of how you can link your business strategy, that's organization strategy. So there are different key business strategies. The 2 examples given here from Michael Porter's area: cost leadership and differentiation. But there are others. Cost leadership, but these are organizations whose main strategy is they get their profit or their competitive advantage from being the lowest cost producer, right? So they are very cost conscious, and they feel they can produce goods and services cheaper than their competitors, therefore they will make more profit. So if that is your business strategy, then you're thinking about things like efficiency and cost control, and then your HR, how will HR support that, right? So for instance, you focus a lot on your existing employees because it's often cheaper to promote from within, to train your existing employees, and so on, than to spend money trying to recruit new people, have to pay them a higher salary when they start, and so on. You would often train for just the specific skill the employee needs, because there's no need spending more money to train the person for a broader set of skills and for their development. You're not that interested in that kind of approach to employee development. You want more focus that we need this skill, we'll train for this. Whereas if you are using a more differentiation approach, that's a company that focuses on being different from its competitors, either by being a better quality producer or providing some sort of niche service, then your HR strategy will change. In that case, you may need to train more broadly to develop a wider skill set so that your employees can always improve the quality of their products or services, or they can be more innovative, they can be more flexible and adaptable to meet different customer requirements, because you are creating more bespoke products for customers, because you are differentiating yourself from your competitors. So these are just examples of how you would link your business strategy to your HR strategy. Another example could be if your business strategy is all about innovation, then your HR strategy, for instance, in terms of reward, instead of giving bonus for productivity, which is what companies do, they give you a performance bonus, they give a innovation bonus. Any employee that comes up with a new copyright or patent or idea that can work, innovative idea, will get X amount of money at the end of the year. So innovation bonus. You know. So that's another way you can say HR is supporting your business strategy. These are ideas to use for that. So we've talked about business strategy. We've given examples of business strategy and how HR can support business strategy. Let's talk about culture. Now, When we talk about culture, we usually talk about the two most common types of culture we talk about are national culture and organizational culture, right? So in terms of national culture, that is, if you are from Pakistan or from India or from China or from UK or wherever, how we coming from that country, the culture of that country affects your behavior, worldview, attitude, and so on, right? So obviously, as a workforce, if we are predominantly employing people from the UK, national culture will affect our employee behavior and the way we manage them, right? So, for instance, um, America is considered a highly individualistic society. So you see us there talking about something like individualism. I'll just annotate that now. And power distance. Let's talk about individualism and power distance. So countries like America are high on individualism, and everybody thinks about themselves and not really solidarity or community oriented, um, or that much family oriented compared to, for instance, Asian or African countries that are more collectivist rather than individualist. Um, so we expect in America employee behavior and HR management styles to reward more individualistic behavior. So we rather have individual performance appraisal rather than team performance appraisal. We have individual reward rather than team reward. If we trade, we are looking for individual um, progression in that training rather than training as a group and seeing how the whole group progresses and ensuring that everybody in the group can function with the set of skills in the course. So that would be, for instance, an example of how individualism affects HRM in terms of national culture. Power distance, the same thing. In a country like America, UK, we have low power distance. So if an employee is sitting with a boss, if an outsider comes, they may not know who's the employee, who's the boss. From the body language, from the dressing, they're all the same. The boss can help the employee carry their files, their cup of coffee, whatever. When the boss wants to make decisions, he's going to consult the employee quite a lot, right? Countries with that's low power distance, like America, UK. Countries with high power distance, right? There, once an outsider comes, they can clearly see who's the boss, who's not the boss. Just even the way the tables are sitting arranged, you see the boss sitting up there in a different corner or having their own office, employees different. You see the employee behavior around the boss, their body language very more subservient. When the boss is taking decisions, there's much less consultation. The boss takes decisions, tells you what to do, much more direction and control. So these are factors around national culture, right? But I would like us to rather focus on organizational culture. This idea of organizational culture. So this is the idea that every company has its own culture, right? And sometimes that culture can be more powerful than the influence of the national culture. So for instance, if you work for IBM, anywhere in the world you work for IBM, there's an IBM way of doing things. So if you work for HP, a HP way. If you work for Google or Apple, a Google or Apple way of doing things, right? And that can really affect employee mindset, employee behavior, HRM management style, leadership style in the organization. So what is the organization's culture? Now the culture can be good or bad, it can be toxic or non-toxic. It can promote bad things like, there are some cultures where they promote sexual harassment or bullying, that kind of thing. Whereas there are cultures that are much more ethical and don't have, that kind of bad behavior. Cultures can be strong or weak. Again, cultures are very strong, are very pronounced, very clear. The brand image of the organization, the employees, are very clear what it means to work with the organization and what's expected of them. The organizational culture can be weak in that it's there, but employees are not quite clear on all the aspects, what it means to work for the organization, how to identify with the organization, right? You see companies with a strong organizational culture, employees will often wear the t-shirt or, some sort of clothing with the brand logo, or on the neck, your ID card will have that. You would see a lot of people using technical terms that are unique to the organization, and this is the way we do things here. And you, they will even develop their own language for something, and like Google now call their employees Googlers and things like that. You will see a very strong culture. So there are also different types of organizational culture. Let's see if we have. Yeah. So this is by Charles Handy, very popular model that identifies 4 common types of organizational culture. So the power culture is a culture that is very much focused around organizational power and control, and you have a um, strong leadership in the organization. Just give me a second. Let me see if I can pull out actually something that can help us look at this a bit more easily. I've got a slide I can show you this. I'm just pulling up a slide that I can post. Sometimes you can do this on Google actually. Sorry, my computer is a bit slow today. Let's see if the slide is open up there. Alright, that should be open. Let's get it back. Yeah, see this. That's it. That's easier there. See if I can maximize this.
Mm-hmm.
So in your power culture, this tends to be your organizations with. So I'm just hoping it. Maximize. Yeah. One of these should be very quickly. So, alright, let's yeah. So, yeah. So the power culture. So this is an organization where we say we have a strong character that dominates. For instance, the CEO can be very strong, powerful person. Decision making is centralized, and you find this common in family businesses where you have the head of the family running business and his employees, his family relatives, and then they now have employees under. And basically, any decision, even your HR director, your marketing director, they may be brothers or cousins, but they will, instead of taking a decision for HR, they will first wait and go and discuss with the head of the family. Why? Because they still need his approval or her approval, right? So this is quite common in small family businesses, small entrepreneurial companies. The image of it is a spider web with the spider at the center. All decision making is through one central figure, or at least approval through one central figure. So we call that a power culture because there's a very dominant, powerful person, right? So the culture there is all about addressing the requirements of whoever you identify as the powerful person in the organization. We have the role culture. This is more a bureaucratic type of organization. You get a lot of large organizations, civil service, public service organizations having this type of culture. It's more about process, filling forms, following due process, due procedure. And the idea is that each of these process or procedure has some logic behind it, and there's a reason why we are doing it. So decision making can be quite slow in this kind of thing, and this thing can be quite impersonal. So rather than using your personal relationship with people in the organization, they say, okay, this thing you just tell me, write a report. This thing you just told me, go back and write a memo and submit to your head of department, submit to your line manager. Line manager says to head of department, they said the head of department says to me, but I just talked with you. They say, no, go and write the memo and send through the process, So it's a lot of formal definition of tasks, formal definitions of roles, and people trying to just keep to their job description. A lot of hierarchy in the culture. It can feel like a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. It can feel like a lot of struggle and time to get things done, right? And a lot of authority relationships. The other two common types of culture, the task culture. This is where the emphasis on getting the job done. So this you find it a lot in project-driven organizations or organizations that use project management approach. They have a task to do, they form a project team, and it's all about delivery, and they've moved on to the next project. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 projects on the go at the same time. So this is not really concerned with personal power, like the power culture, or with bureaucratic hierarchy, like in the role culture. But what we are looking at is the ability to draw the required resources, which people, which skills do you need for this project, which money do you need, how many computers do you need, how many offices do you need, and putting them together to deliver a project. And you can see that this will be quite a fast-paced organization, and it can feel quite a pressured culture if you work under it. You feel always about targets and timelines and project plan and delivery. But it empowers. This is also a culture where you feel that the lower teams and lower level employees and managers feel more empowered to take decisions by themselves. Because for this project to succeed, you normally decentralize or devolve some aspect of decision making, and you expect the teams to take at least some level of decision making by themselves. And this also you find in companies that are a bit creative or innovative, they tend to have this kind of organizational culture. And it sometimes matches with a matrix structure. So when we talk about organizational structure, the idea of a matrix structure, somebody reporting to more than one manager. You have your line manager, but you also have your project manager for the project you've been assigned to. Then another common type of organizational culture is the person culture. So this is it's not that common, but this is more around the charisma of a particular individual. But also this is not a particular individual, but a particular set of individuals. It's a culture where the work is normally attracted, that the customers are attracted to you because they already know of a particular person. So, for instance, they already know that this lawyer is good, right? So they go to this law firm because they know of a particular lawyer that works for that firm. Management consultants, so where you have 3, 4, 5 high-powered management consultants, one specialized in strategy change, another one specialized in change management, another one specialized in product improvement, and they are known in their industry. So whenever you have a product improvement problem, you want to go to this company because you want Mr. X to handle it. He's the product improvement expert. When you have a change management problem, you want to go and you want Mrs. Y to handle it because she's the change management expert. Everybody knows. So a lot of the business is already attracted based on the guru, the expert, and a lot of the employees now will now work under these people in that way. It's all centered around whatever the person wants, and each of these people now, they are like stars in the company, but they have their own distinctive way of doing things, their own different ways of doing things. So within one company, you have different ways of doing things. The day you work for the project management expert, he tells you, oh, this is the way we like to do things. We like to do this. If for any reason you now change and start working for the strategic management expert, you say, oh, no, don't do it like that. This is my way of doing things. I want all the people in my team to work like this. And so there's no uniform way of doing things. It depends on the person, the charismatic star or expert or person there. So we find it a lot in like management consulting companies, law firms, some places, some hospitals with key doctors and so on. So these are common types of culture. We don't say that this is particularly good or bad. It depends on what works for your company. But obviously, if one culture is not working for your company, you need to now look at
Sorry, I just lost the connection.
Sorry, are you okay? Did you get what I said?
Yeah. It's like just you were on a personal culture, and you were just explaining that.
Yeah. So that's the explanation for Handy's type of culture. But what you are saying is, we are not saying one is good or one is bad. It depends on your organization and what works for your company. But if what you are doing doesn't work for your company, then you've got to change to something else. So that would be like the recommendation you can make if you are like a HR consultant. You need to find out what is organization's unique culture and do we need to change it or do we need to strengthen it. That's the idea. So something to think about. So in terms of HR planning, some of the issues you may face if you're a HR consultant or HR manager, you need to look at how do we plan for organization, maybe issues like lower productivity. So what are the sorry. So what are the things you can do? So some options are there. You need to figure out whether they are appropriate for your organization. One is you can look at restructuring, downsizing, right sizing, or even recruiting and improving the size. You can look at redesigning the work, changing the way work is done, who does what work. For instance, introducing automation. Things are done very manually. You can computerize, you can automate, you can bring in machines, and you can look at outsourcing. If it is more effective or better quality or cheaper done by experts outside, then you can even outsource the work. So these are some solutions you can put in terms of your HR strategy, your HR strategic plan to improve productivity. There's some common issues we face, common solutions. The idea of getting the right person with the right skills or capability in the right position or right job, at the right time. So that's the idea of strategic workforce planning in terms of resourcing especially. Um, so we're not going to go through the forecasting and demand thing. I think we'll do that in our second session. But this is just a recap. Scan the external environment, internal environment, forecast your demand, skills, numbers, and so on. So a lot of this is just re-emphasizing stuff we've done before. And actually skip that. Right. So this one is looking specifically at your numbers of staff. So when we talk about your workforce plan, one of the issues is, like we say, getting the right number of people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. So how do you come up with a figure for this year? This is the amount of employees we need, and therefore this is the amount we need to recruit or the amount we need to lay off. So you need to look at your current staffing levels. How many employees do you have? You need to look at how many you estimate will leave this year, either due to retirement or people who have already put in their notice of resignation, or your normal average number of turnover you have in a year, whatever you want to use. Then inflows for the year. How many do you need to recruit? How many are already in the recruitment pipeline? And that will give you your total supply for the year. Sources of inflows. So how many are coming externally? How many will be internal transfers moving from one department to the other, or from one branch of the organization to the other? How many of these will be promotions? How many of these will be recalls? For instance, if you send an expatriate abroad a year, calling. In terms of outflows, things you need to keep in mind: promotions, lower level has to be replaced, turnover, people leaving, terminations, if there's disciplinary reasons or whatever performance reasons that you have to sack people. Demotions, very rare, hopefully, but sometimes happens, especially for underperformance. Your retirement, death, and layoffs. That will give you your current staffing levels of employees in employees. So again, in your workforce plan, you can have an appendix where you have something like this, and you just do a quick diagrammatic illustration to show how many investigators are coming in, how many investigators are coming out through all of these sources. Now, this is re-emphasizing the idea that people are an organization's most important asset. Organizations, obviously, products are important, customers are important, processes are important, but we believe it's people that will deliver all of this service. So, in terms of the business planning process, you need to understand this idea of what's the company vision, company mission statement, right? Company values, and you need to reflect that somehow in your HR plan. Where this is not the case, where the company doesn't have, then your HR plan has to make a recommendation that we need to develop through some sort of vision development process or leadership development process, either top-down approach or bottom approach, where you consult widely, or you just get your top leaders go there for a retreat to come up with your plan and strategy. So it's very important when you're doing your HR planning process, first of all, identify, do we have a company vision and mission and value statement? Is this still fit for purpose? Does it need refreshing? Or does it need change, or is it okay to work with? Or we don't have, and we need to even start from scratch. And then, therefore, when you are doing your HR plan, for each of the functions we talked about, recruitment, training, compensation and reward, so on, you can show where it links to some of these aspects of the vision or mission statement. Just a small one sentence. Sometimes people put it in their plan just to show that this can support this aspect of our mission, or this can support this aspect of our vision. So, in terms of developing HR strategy, obviously we hope that the HR department has the skills and capabilities relevant to go through this planning process. So all the things we've been covering in the past 4 sessions, your ability to plan, your knowledge of how to forecast, demand and supply and so on. It's quite important. In terms of organizational performance, we need to have some clear performance objectives, some clear performance criteria. And then we need to have some sort of review appraisal process where we say, okay, these are performance targets. We've done the work. We now need to appraise or review. Do we meet our target? And these are criteria for evaluation. So organizations have that at the organizational level, and then individuals will have that at the individual level. HR really supports, especially the individual performance target, individual performance appraisal, but all of this has to be aligned and linked to company performance targets, company organizational performance. OD, organizational design and structure. We will talk more about this in more detail when we look at LO5. I think I just got clarification for Rahman. We'll probably do that next week. Probably have to have the LO5 lesson next week. But the idea here is you need to be able to draw or map out the company structure in terms of reporting lines, organogram, hierarchy, layers of management, and then the whole idea of organizational design is to now say what changes do we need to make to improve efficiency, improve productivity to this structure. How do we add value to the organizational structure? Is it taking too long for a decision to be made? Are there too many layers, which means too much cost, too many levels of management? Or is it too flat and an organization, a manager has too much to do, too many people to manage, he cannot manage effectively? We need to create another layer of management to help. So these are some decisions you need to take. Then you also need to look at your product line. You need to create a structure that focuses on your products and is well suited to products. Or if you are a project management based organization, you create a structure that is more project management focused, matrix structure, for instance. If you are an international organization, you now create a more geographical structure, one for Europe, one for Asia, one for Africa, and so on. So these are different structural aspects. We've talked a lot about recruitment and resourcing, so I'm not going to go into that. But even today, we talked about demand and supply, inflows and outflows of employees. OD, organizational development, another important thing to consider when you're doing your workforce planning. So this is boosting your level of leadership quality and leadership development. You're boosting your organizational agility and skill level, competence level within the organization. So you normally look at it at 3 levels. What we say is, first of all, individuals, what do we need to do to improve individual performance and effectiveness? So for each individual, we can have some sort of personal development plan. Teams within the organization, we now look at teams and say, how can we improve team dynamics, team effectiveness? Sometimes we may have to do team building exercises, away days, that kind of thing, to build cohesion and effectiveness among the team, right? And capabilities. And then we look at the organization as a whole, especially the organizational culture, which we first looked at 4 different types of organizational culture. Say, what are the touch points in this culture? What are the issues we need to strengthen, or what are the aspects we need to change? Or do we need to revamp the whole culture and move to a different type of culture? Right? So we can actually start mapping out what the culture looks like, doing a cultural audit, and identifying what we need to change, and then delivering that change. So a lot of that, all of these 3 levels of intervention, we call organizational development. So this again is another way we see the company strategy, company structure, company culture being aligned to HRM. Compensation and benefits, what some people call reward. So this is a combination of the different ways an employer is rewarded financially, such as your salary, your bonus, your pension, benefits, profit sharing, share options, so on, and even non-financial rewards such as praise and recognition, employee of the month scheme, employee of the year, things like that. So in your HR plan, like we said, there will be a section for rewards, compensation, there will be a section for recruitment and so on. So there you will identify any changes you want to make to reward, compensation to benefit. But obviously it has to be within budget. You can't just say you pay any less. So we've talked about organizational culture already, and the way we do things around here. We've talked about Handy's 4 major types of organizational culture. There's one other thing I would like to show you when it comes to organizational culture. Let me just give me a second to be able to show you that. Yeah. Have you seen this model before called the cultural web?
No.
Alright, so this is another good model of organizational culture. If you want to actually say what's unique about this organization's culture, this particular company's culture. Because the problem with Handy is good, but it's basically saying there are 4 types of culture. Yeah? But sometimes you want to drill down to something quite unique to this organization. Right? So in that case, you can use something like the cultural web. And what you're saying here is, for my company, let's say is IBM, what are the things that are quite symbolic for the company? Right? It could be things like their brand, their logo, their office building. It could be anything that they value as quite symbolic. That anything you want to change, you say, oh, you can't touch that. That is something precious to IBM. What are the stories, especially of their founding fathers, their early entrepreneurs, stories of some contracts that they were managed to win, stories of how, I remember 5 years ago, how we had to work through Christmas to deliver this project, and, we really turned around the project so far, and the whole company is really, passionate about that story and feels uplifted whenever they remember that story. Right? So those stories are a key part of their cultural fabric because they influence how employees now, the expectation that is now on employees. That, oh, if we did that 5 years ago and it's valued by this company, if we are in a similar situation, that's how employees are expected to behave. We'll be expected to work all out flat to deliver a project. We'll never fail. We'll never miss a deadline. What are the routines and rituals in the company? Oh, is it that every month we must have a town hall meeting with the CEO, or the CEO will do a voice call to all employees? It's a ritual, it's a routine. That's value part of community. Community, yes, once a month we have a conference call with our CEO and ask any question. It's a very important thing to them. It starts telling you about their culture, that their culture is one where there's more communication between the top and the bottom of the employees, right? Or it could be that once a year they have a organization picnic where the senior executive team wear jeans, everybody comes in and they all have a picnic and fun together, and you can see somebody very low down in the organization, having a barbecue with the CEO, and they value it very much. Control systems. What are their structures to ensure decisions are made and control is kept to implement those decisions? Is it through informal or formal systems? Is it through computerized controls and audits? How do they control themselves? Then the organizational structure obviously also kind of reflects the culture. We talked about how in Handy the matrix structure supports the role culture. And then the power structures, who are the power brokers within the organization, in each department, in each team, who are the powerful people, and how do they trade off with each other. Right? And all of that will form the paradigm, which is your summary of the organization's culture. So sometimes if you want to talk about an organization's culture, you can also use this model where you just look at the organization, and from your observation, from your analysis, you can identify what is key, what is valued in terms of symbols, stories, so on, and overall you get your paradigm. So I'll give you an example of that in practice. This is NHS, which is the public health service in the UK. And you can see the paradigm here is the NHS is good. We are the guys who save people's lives and health. NHS, the paradigm is we are a public service. We cannot be privatized. We should always be there for public good, right? The doctors are the people who know best, right? What are the kind of symbols they have? The white coats, very important to them. You know, that image of a professional doctor, right, and so on and so forth. The stories of how they invented penicillin or one treatment or the other. These are important routines. Every morning by 10 a.m. they do a ward round. Doctors must go bed to bed and see every single patient who has been admitted overnight, and so on and so forth. So this is another model you can use if you are looking at organizational culture, quite interesting. So we looked at that, we looked at adding value. Um, so sample of organizational planning process at Aon there, moving from identify your business strategy to identify your workforce capabilities for the next financial year, therefore developing your strategic plan, and then your HR metrics. How will you measure HR performance? How will you know HR has performed? And then we can look at the example of ASDA. This is their balance scorecard. There are 4 key priorities for the year. So this is their business strategy. And if you look at the top one here, it talks about the operating model. Our everyday low-cost business model enables us to drive productivity and lower prices for that. Right? Britain's lowest cost to operate supermarket. So their strategy was to be low cost, to be the supermarket in the UK that had the lowest cost base. That's the only way they said they could make profit. So how does HR align to that now? On the right-hand side here, you see a lot of that. What HR had to do was things like this: downsizing, restructuring, cutting out a lot of middle managers, and so on, to deliver a lower cost base employees. So that's an example of a HR strategy. You can see business strategy on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, what HR has to do, the HR strategy to deliver that business. Yeah, any question?
I don't know. That's fine. That's fine.
Sorry?
That's fine. Yeah, it's
All
okay.
right.
No questions.
All right. So then you need to also think about some of the way to measure this your workforce plan or HR strategy. So you can have measures around staff turnover. So for instance, if you say we are going to reduce staff turnover by 5%, you could say you are going to improve the workforce productivity by 20%. You could say you are going to reduce absenteeism by 10%. These are samples of measurement criteria you can put in your workforce plan as an output that you expect. You can improve employee retention. You can give a percentage you want to improve employee retention by 20%. So these are just some things that, depending on what you feel are your priorities, that you can put as your performance measures. And these are just ways in which, therefore, if you put a target of improving turnover, that is reducing the amount of employees who leave, then your workforce plan will now need to have things like training and recruitment to motivate staff to stay because they are going to get training, review upwards pay and pay reward salary to keep employees happy with higher pay, job enrichment, giving people more tasks to do, more autonomy in their jobs, so that they'll be more happy with more responsibility in their jobs, they will stay, or some schemes to reward staff loyalty. Like if you 10-year award, service award, 20-year service award, some money if you 10 years as photograph with the CEO and a certificate, things like that. So if staff turnover is your target, then these are what we expect in your workforce plan under that as your HR strategies to achieve this. So these are just different ways of calculating some of these metrics and how to tackle things like absenteeism again, if absenteeism is your target. So any questions?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
All right. Have you read the case study for your assignment?
Not yet.
Okay. So Do we take a 5-minute break? We'll come back, we'll read the case study, and then we'll give you some assignment support. Is that okay?
Okay, okay, that's fine.
All right, cheers.